Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this session. EU platforms, how machine translation helps EU connect with the public. And we have a great lineup here today with 5 speakers from a variety of Commission, Economic and Social Committee and Committee of the Regions departments. And I welcome all of them, and I welcome all of you here in this session who are tuning in. We have over 100 attendees, and I will give a few words first, setting the scene a little bit, and then we will go to each and every one of the speakers. And after each speaker, you will have the possibility to ask questions to the speaker. And the ones who get the most votes will be the question that will be asked first. And then we see how much time we have to take all the different questions, if there are many of them. But this is a very interesting session. It's an incredibly important task that we have to make EU understood by people in their own languages. Technology has opened up this possibility to have this instantly for us to be able to achieve that. And as you probably know, DGT has been active in the machine translation field since the 70s. All of the different technologies since then have been used by us. We have recently, of course, raised the ambition with our neuro machine translation system, eTranslation, which is a cooperation between DG Connect and ourselves under the CEF program. And it is our machine translation system. It is a European machine translation system, which is quite a big success, I would say. It serves around 90 IT systems across the board. We have all the institutions, Centre de Traduction. We have 7,000 small and medium-sized enterprises and member states or administrations signed up. 95 million pages were translated last year. So indeed, I would say quite a big success. But we're also in the forefront of machine translation development, computational linguistics, and the research in this field. And we are competing with all the big players in terms of quality. There's one, we call it the Olympics of machine translation. It's the WMT conference. And in this, we've been participating in these conferences since it was started, and we benchmark ourselves there, comparing ourselves to other systems by some of the really big dragons like Facebook and Google, etc. And we always end up in the top tier, top 5, top 3. This is where eTranslation usually ends up. And this is something that I think we should be quite proud of. And this is also the reason, I would say, to why eTranslation is integrated into such high-profile projects like the Europa site, of course, Reopen EU, Committee of the Regions, Conference for the Future of Europe, Economic and Social Committee. And this is what we will hear about today. So I'm very much looking forward to the presentations by the different colleagues. And we shall start today with Gaetan Ricard Nioul, who is the Deputy Head of Unit for Citizens Dialogue in DG Com. Can I ask you, Gaetan, to take the floor, please? Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to be here, and I need to apologize because I cannot stay for the whole panel. So, but I'd be happy to answer questions if there are any right after this presentation, which I will try to keep short. I must also apologize for something else, is that I don't really have slide to share, unfortunately, because the project I am talking about is still in the making, and it's actually not yet in the external world. So you are among the first people who hear about it. So I can't really share any formal presentation, but I'm happy to share informal information about it and have a discussion about its potential. So I'm here to talk about the platform that we are developing in the Commission for the Conference on the Future of Europe. So as you know, the conference on the future of Europe is one of the flagship projects of this commission, and actually of the three institutions, which are the European Commission, the European Parliament, and the Council of Ministers. It's actually interesting for that. It's probably the first time that the three institutions get together on a project that is supposed to be a bottom-up participatory project for citizens to share their views on the future of Europe. Initially, it was foreseen to start in May 2019 and end in the first semester of 2022. So it was meant to be a 2-year process. Unfortunately, due to the sanitary context, it was postponed, and we don't know really when it will be able to start the whole project. It has, of course, some drawback. We would like to take time to share the views of citizens about the future of Europe, but at the same time, it helped us actually to take a bit more time to be perhaps a bit more ambitious on some of the tools that we were developing for the conference. And this includes the platform, the online platform that we have been developing, which will allow a level of citizens' engagement and, more importantly, of a horizontal, multilingual, transnational dialogue between citizens that has never been done before. So it is exciting, and I can explain a little bit more what it will look like, because, as I was saying, it's still in the making. I want to say that it's still in the making, and since the conference, it's still under interinstitutional discussion now. Everything I say here may be changed a little bit within these through these negotiations. But we are in an informal discussion, and I wanted to share some elements of the way we have conceived so far this platform. So it's meant to be not only an interactive platform for citizens' engagement, but also the main hub of the conference, where we will find all the information. The way we have conceived it is that we have first looked at all the civic tech software out there. So these software that are being developed for online citizens engagement. And we've looked at them, and we've decided to work on the basis of one which is called Decidim, which is an open source software for citizen engagement. And the big job has been for the past months to integrate this software into Europa, the Europa environment, while developing the functionalities that we would need for this conference. So we were also developing extra feature for what compared to what already exists on the Decidim. And of course, we had to integrate into the Europa environment, respecting, of course, notably the security element of that environment and others that you can imagine. So this platform should allow three types of interaction with citizens. One would be to share an ID, share a proposal. Another one will be to have access to a map with all the events taking place during the conference everywhere in Europe, from the European level to the local level, and decide that you want to participate, perhaps even register on the platform. And you will also be able to register your event on the platform, so that everyone knows that you are organizing something as an organization, as a citizen. The platform will be open to both public and private actors, so a municipality, an NGO, but also a simple citizens who want to take part. And of course, what is of great interest to you is the multilingual aspect of that platform. What is really interesting is that we have two types of translation going on for that platform. We have first a human translation for everything that is structural in the system. So of course, the Decidim functionalities that we are integrating into the Europa environment, but also the specific content we will put in there, the different topics we will discuss and how they are framed, the documents that we will put online, whether they are fact sheets, whether they are toolkits, that kind of thing. But we will also use, as it was already mentioned, the eTranslation tool for all the dynamic content. So basically, people who will contribute a proposal will be able to see other proposals, other ideas, other people's events in their own language. They will be able also to see in the original language if they want, but they can translate everything in their own language. And so the proposal will be translated, the citizens' proposal, through the eTranslation system. Of course, as I was saying, we are in the making of that tool, so we are only testing it right now, and we will, of course, have to test it on a much larger scale. But it's very interesting because it's the first time we could perhaps have this horizontal dialogue, as I was saying, between citizens on the transnational level. So it is an interesting tool that should be available for the three institutions during the conference. Of course, we will discuss with the Parliament and the Council whether we want to change things in that platform, but that idea is there, and hopefully we're hoping to make that platform for the conference potentially a corporate tool that can be used for other endeavor of the Commission, of other institutions. And the beauty of that system, of this civic tech software, is that there is a community around the Decidim software. So all the improvements that we are making at European level through this Commission work will be available for everyone. So, for example, all the new functionalities that we are developing will be available for people who want to use that software again. So all the improvements are made for the community. So this is a very interesting enterprise. So I think I have covered most of the elements. I must say this is obviously not only a DGCOM project. This is, as I was saying, a corporate project. So far, we've been working, of course, with DGT, especially on the translation elements, but also with colleagues in Digit, of course, who have been helping with the IT development, with the Secretariat-General, of course, of the Commission, and also with colleagues from the Joint Research Council of the Commission. So on the research side, they've really helped us, notably identified which civic tech software to use, etc. Yes, I think I will stop here for now. I'm happy to answer questions now, if you allow me, since I will have to leave, unfortunately.
Of course. Let's see if we can take a question. I have to be a rebel, unfortunately. I hope you can allow me that, because the questions which have received the most likes are not really questions on the Ko-fi platform, whereas one which is just put now is actually more directly related to what Gaëtan has presented to us. So if you agree, the other ones. Is the idea that some of the proposals for the future of Europe put forward by the citizens via a platform will then be picked up and followed up by the Commission? Which topics could the proposals cover? That's the question to you, Gaëtan, and I will come back to the others afterwards.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I think the whole idea of the conference, and this is perhaps something I didn't stress enough, so thank you for that question. It's meant to be a relatively long-term process. So obviously we don't want people to engage in that process without a commitment to follow up on the proposal. So of course we are talking about participatory democracy. It's not meant to replace representative democracy. It's meant to reinforce it, complement it, but it also means that there should be a commitment of the three institutions involved to respond to what will be proposed by citizens. So yes, there will be a process for the follow-up that will be clear for everyone that will go into the conference. They should know what will be done with their contribution. That's for sure. And on the topics, I think we will need to structure the platform around some very broad thematics, but we are talking about the future of Europe. So it means that it is very broad on the one hand, and on the other hand, it also means there is still no joint declaration of the three institutions, but each institution has adopted a document on the conference, and all these documents say very clearly that it should remain open. So if somebody considered that the thematics proposed do not cover the proposals they want to make, they will still be able to make it. There will be an open box for any kind of a suggestion that do not fall in the thematics proposed.
There was also a question directly to you on the social media used and whether translation and machine translation would also be a part of that.
Of the social media use.
Yeah, would social media be a part of the platform and its role? What will be the role of social media in the upcoming platform was the question.
I think it's pretty obvious that we cannot have the platform without an accompanying communication and outreach strategy, that's for sure. So we are building up that as well parallelly, and we will make a conscious and proactive efforts to direct that communication at people also who are not used to participate in EU affairs. This is the whole point of having invested a lot in this platform, is to make sure that it is widely used, including by people who are a bit more distant
and this will also be multilingual, was the question.
And of course, this communication strategy will include a social media element. I think the social media will be mainly used to redirect people to the platform that will be multilingual, and the social media hopefully will rely on a great participation of the representation in the member states and the European Parliament offices in the member states, so that they should direct their communication to their audience in their own language. I think we will mainly rely on that. I don't think we are aiming to use eTranslation directly on the social media accounts, but if you tell me that this is a possibility, I'm happy to hear about it.
No, but thanks for that answer. There were a few other answers which had a lot of different votes. I will take them very quickly. Lukas will help me a little bit with timekeeping here, but what is the recruitment process to be involved in the development of the MT platform, and is it open to UK nationals? Well, we are using a lot of contractual people who are working from the outside, and there is no particular limit on the nationality there. But the development of the EU MT platform is, shall we say, an internal thing that we are doing inside the Commission, as I said, with contractors from the outside. And generally speaking, this is open, as I said, to all people with specific skills. These are skills which are about, are you able to do engine building? Are you a data analyst? Are you somebody who is a computational linguist, etc.? These are the different skills that we will be looking for to develop the e-translation system. So you have to look out in EPSO for any openings when it comes to working with us on developing e-translation. What achievements have we made so far for the health in the COVID situation? Well, what we've done is that we have put e-translation onto the various COVID information platforms. We have developed a specific engine, machine translation engine for DG Santé, the health issues, with specific data which we received from DG Santé and which we have been able to gather also from Euromis, our huge database that we are working with. So indeed, yes, these are the different achievements which have been done in machine translation so far. Maybe the more overall question on AI, we can come back to that a little bit later towards the end of this discussion. Can I now ask Davide to come in? This would be a pre-recorded message from Davide. He's a policy analyst at JRC and he's working with Reopen Europe, but he will be here as well to answer any questions after his pre-recorded message or intervention rather. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Davide AUTERI, and I work at the Joint Research Center at ISPRA in Italy, where I am responsible for the Knowledge Center of Territorial Policies. You may ask, why has an expert of urban and regional analysis been invited to speak at an event on translations? Well, by accident, as of May, I am also responsible for the development of Reopen EU, which represents a very interesting case study for translations in general, and in particular for machine translation. Despite not being an expert on this topic, I'll provide you with our on-field experience with machine translation in one of the most popular Commission projects. So I will first introduce you to what the Reopen EU is, and then we will touch some general considerations on translations in Reopen EU, and then I will try to make a comparison of the various machine tools we used, machine translation engines we used in Reopen EU. You can find the website at the URL reopen.europa.eu. And where does it come from? Reopen EU stems from this communication from the Commission of the 13th of May on tourism and transport in 2020 and beyond, where the Commission announces a dedicated website with an interactive map combining information from member states and tourist and travel industry. And this map will be accompanied by real-time information. So real-time information, of course, already announces something in terms of translations as well. The 15th June was set to become the Big Bang date for tourism after the various lockdowns in several member states in Europe. So all countries were trying to harmonize and open their borders on that date, and the Commission was trying to enable this Big Bang to happen so that tourism could be restored. So we received as JRC a very first draft request on 4 May, very minimal request. Are you available to produce something in terms of tourism for citizens? We said yes, without knowing very well what would have expected us afterwards. Then, as you've seen on the 13th of May, the Commission communication on tourism and transport has framed a bit what was expected from us. We received our first technical specifications on 15 May from DG GROW, that is the policy DG in charge of the project. That was a Friday afternoon, by the way, and we had to launch the website on 15 June, Monday morning. Very tough deadlines, as I say here, making the impossible possible. It was really very difficult to get from zero to online with such a big project in less than 1 month at the end. We are covering 27 member states, information for 27 member states, plus 4 Schengen associated countries. We have some 30 indicators divided in 4 categories. At the beginning, they were info, travel, services, health, and safety. The updates are happening every day, even twice a day, also during the weekends, very often. And as I said, all of these in 24 languages. Reopen EU is having a second life since last week, as it was initially conceived to foster tourism after lockdowns. Now we are back to lockdowns all across Europe. So last week, our president issued a statement on additional measures for EU's response to coronavirus, and Reopen EU is mentioned to be the one-stop shop for information about health measures and travel possibilities across the EU. What does it look like? If you go on the website now, you will see the first entry point is focused on epidemiology. So you can see some indicators for all European countries. Then you have coronavirus measures in place in each country. Travel, a lot of information on travel, and also some other information more focused on tourism at the moment. There will be other information in the future, for instance, about vaccination campaigns. Some statistics. Reopen EU has been visited by more than 7 million visitors so far, more than 24 million page views. So you see from these numbers that it's a very successful and very popular project. So now that we have framed a bit what Reopen EU is, let's go into the translation bit of it, some general considerations. Situation at launch was very, very, very difficult because member states were changing their legislation to open up borders exactly those days. So we were receiving most information from member states on Monday 15 in the morning at 7 o'clock when the website was launched at 8 o'clock more or less. So you can understand that time for professional translation, human translation was not available. Professional and human translation was our plan A. We got prepared for a plan B, and in the end, we had to go for plan B and use machine translation. So in preparation of it, we placed a disclaimer on the homepage of the website, stating very clearly at the bottom of the homepage that due to the frequency of the updates, this tool partly relies on automatic machine translation. So the initial feedback was mixed. We surely received a lot of concerns by our colleagues, especially those in EU delegations and other commission services, were very much focused on translations that were not expected to be run on machine translation, that they were not even understood to be run with machine translation. And also feedback from citizens that was mostly positive. Citizens seem to be more focused and more concerned of content and information that we were providing rather than issues with translations, even if also translations was mentioned by a few of them. So after the launch, we switched to human translation, which was our plan A at the beginning. This happened a few days after launch. And then we progressively switched to human translation, and this was a major improvement. Of course, there is no battle between machine translation and human translation. Problem is that human translation requires several days from the time we make a request to the time the information is, the translation is sent back to us. And while we were waiting for these translations to be ready, much of the content was already changed in the meantime. And this was causing a permanent mix of professional translation and machine translation on the website. So our hope was that after the initial wave of changes, very frequent changes, this would have decreased over time and allowed for a stabilization of the descriptions and statements so that we could cope with the machine translation, with the professional translation and human translation only. But unfortunately, after more or less 1 month, we were struggling to keep with this update frequency. We had to agree with our colleagues at DG Translation that the volume and frequency of the updates was not compatible with professional human translation. So what is an estimate of what we're talking about in terms of number of translations? More or less, we estimate that we are translating at the moment 300,000 characters per day. That's the amount we're talking about. So we have a functional mailbox where we receive messages from citizens and other users. We have received more than 15,000 messages so far. Most of them relate to individual requests. I want to go from A to B. How can I do it? Am I allowed? But of course, we also have other requests in this functional mailbox. We have flagging of outdated information. We have requests for new functionalities. We have also compliments and also issues with the translation. I have chosen this message from feedback from users. This is from the 1st of July, so 2 weeks after we launched the website, and we were in a hybrid situation with some machine translation and some human translation. And this person says, "Dear sir of madam, I commend your website. It is very good and very useful. However, the English that is used is terrible. Are you using machine translation?" So we see two things here. The first one, that machine translation was not understood to be used, at least in part, despite the disclaimer. And the second one is that the English is terrible. So About the disclaimer, if you use machine translation, make it visible. This is the way it is displayed now. We have changed our approach. Instead of being at the bottom of the homepage, where nobody notices it, it is popping up every time you select a language, so that it's absolutely visible. And since we have implemented this new disclaimer, the number of concerns has dramatically reduced. And the other problem is that the main problem with machine translation was not the engine, but the English, which is our source language. And unfortunately, we had a poor quality of the source texts. We were very cautious in changing the text we were receiving, because those were coming by official sources through official channels. And we were lacking the necessary knowledge, of the legal framework governing movements and restrictions. And in addition, on top of it, we were not native English speakers in the team. This is an example of a problematic text. As you see, we have a wrong usage of commas. We have duplications. We have typos. The sentences are a little bit clumsy as well. I have replaced the country name by XYZ to anonymize it a bit. But if you read the text, you will realize that this text is not easy to be understood, of course, by a machine translation engine. So we were forced to look at these texts and change them, to adapt them to machine translation in order to improve the situation. So we realized that if you want to make the machine translation tools easier, life easier, you have to avoid long and fragmented sentences. So you have to shorten and split the sentences. Be careful with the use of commas and punctuation in general. Watch out for typos. Watch out for false friends. If you use HTML to add some formatting, bold, italics, bullet points, links, be precise with the formatting. And we have noticed that using break lines rather than paragraphs is more difficult to be understood by machine translation tools. So it's better to separate and split paragraphs using the P/P. Which machine translation engines did we use in ReopenEU? Well, at the beginning, we had the possibility to choose between Microsoft Azure Translator, Amazon Translate, and eTranslation. We had no clue about what tool was the best. We had no experience at all with it. So we went for the one that was providing easiest access to application programming interface. Of course, we are not manually uploading the text and translating in a window, in an online window. We do it through application programming interfaces. So we needed something that was easy to access and fast in delivery, and fully covering all 24 EU languages. At the beginning, the winner for us was Microsoft Azure, and then since the beginning of October, we moved to eTranslation. What are the pros of Azure Translator? Surely it is very easy to use. The APIs are really easy to use. It's very fast. We have never had any issue with speed. The quality of the output is quite okay. It handles HTML relatively well, and it has also a profanity check, which is a nice addition. On the contrary, we had some problems with conversion of dates as Azure Translator keeps on converting into the US format, and we had to implement some tricks to keep it in the European format. And also, there is a limit of 5,000 characters per request. Amazon Translate is also easy to use APIs. We have found that it is slightly better for Italian and Dutch. We didn't have any problem with the date conversion with Amazon. And it has a no translate tag to avoid the translation of words that should remain the same in all languages. This is a nice option. Cons for Amazon, it's not as fast as Microsoft Azure Translator. We noticed that the speed is not the same. For most languages, Azure seems to be a little bit better than Amazon, apart from Italian and Dutch, and probably also some other languages. We didn't run very extensive tests. It doesn't cover all EU languages. Surely Gaelic, Lithuanian, and Maltese are missing. The handling of HTML tags is a bit less satisfactory compared to Azure. There is no profanity check, and still there is a limit of 5,000 characters per request. eTranslation provides an overall good quality of output. There are no problems with the conversion, no limitation in the number of characters you can send in a single request. As of the beginning of October, the handling of HTML is also quite good, and there is a great support from the development team. It's more difficult to use as it is using asynchronous APIs, so it requires some more development to exploit it at best. At times, it is slower than other engines, or there are long delays to respond. We're working with the development team on this aspect. There is no profanity check, and handling of HTML was not very satisfactory until the end of September, but now this has improved. This is a quick summary table that is summarizing what I just said. As a conclusion, machine translation may be a great solution for applications that do not require 100% precision for translation, but where content is more important than form. But its usage should be clearly advertised to avoid misunderstanding, and the source language must be very carefully written. The engines are under continuous development. We were impressed to see how in a few months we noticed all the improvements from all the engines. So the tables that I showed and the summary that I showed may change in the next months, because really these developments are happening very quickly. In terms of output, eTranslation is probably overall the best for EU languages, but of course, depending on each specific language, the winner can be any of the cited tools. For ease of use and speed, Azure Translator is probably the best. For HTML handling, we are working with the eTranslation team to improve it. So if this is a must for you, probably eTranslation is in the future will be the best one. And very last and bonus slide, we played a bit and checked the verbosity rate of languages in European EU, and we discovered Estonian to be the least verbose language and French to be the most verbose one. And that's all with my presentation. Many thanks.
Thank you so much. So this, as you understood, was a pre-recorded intervention from Davide, but he's there. Unfortunately, we are running a little bit late. I have to go for a question that is more directly asked to you, David, rather than the more general questions on AI, etc., which I understand is not necessarily your speciality, David, if I understand it correctly. But the question more directly to you was, how did you measure quality? That was the question when you did the different comparisons, which I have to say, as the director for eTranslation, I'm very happy with your findings. But you can also see that we are very transparent in the way in which we work together here as colleagues.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it was we made very simple checks. I mean, we used the mother tongue people checking the translations. I know you did it as well on your side, so we also benefited of some checks you made that I received a few months ago. And then we also checked on our side. So for the language that we could master within our team, as we do not have a full coverage of all the EU languages, so we tried to compare which of the 3 engines we tried was providing the best output for each language. On average, eTranslator is performing quite well, quite nicely. As I said, Amazon was slightly better for Italian and Dutch. For Italian, it was quite impressive sometimes. Azure was on average also quite good. I cannot say there is a dramatic difference. I mean, it's always machine translation, so some problems will emerge here and there. But if the source is correct, if the English as a source, we only work with English as a source. I saw a question asking if we use all languages or only English. We use only English as a source. If English is written in the right way for citizens, so in a simple way, and for machine translation with the right punctuation, the right paragraphs, then machine translation, any engine provides a better output independently on the engine. And then you can compare which one is best. As I said, depending on the language, any of those can be the best one. eTranslation overall is very, very efficient. We are very happy. We are not going to go back. We have to fine-tune some technical issues with speed and sometimes lack of response. But apart from that, eTranslation is really good.
Thank you so much for that, David. Now, we have to move on, I'm afraid, but please stay. And also let me say that you will be moderating the network afterwards as well. You'll be present there as well. So you'll be a part of that. Now, can I ask Laura, Deputy Head of Unit, the Europa Web Communication Team in DG Com, to come in, please? Floor is yours, Laura. Thank you.
Yes. Hello. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Indeed, in my presentation, I would like to show you how the Commission is implementing eTranslation on the Europa domain, on the Europa sites, and specifically on the Commission websites. When we talk about Europa, we refer to the europa.eu web domain. On this domain, hundreds of websites of the EU institutions are hosted, and the Commission alone owns around 700 websites on the domain, plus others still outside. My unit in DG Com is in particular responsible for ensuring coherence and the overall governance of the Commission online web presence, donc ec.europa.eu, and we also operate directly the interinstitutional level europa.eu/European Union. So, as you can imagine, in such a landscape with hundreds of websites, receiving 100 million visits per year, and representing online an organization which is multilingual by definition, the language policy, the language coverage policy of our websites has always been at the center of our online online communication strategy. When in 2014 we launched a project to rationalize the Commission web presence, this aspect was one of the main ones we addressed. The language policy was first defined at the time based on a few guiding principles. On the one hand, we had the legal obligations still coming from the Regulation number 1 from 1958, establishing which languages are the official EU languages, and ensuring that all languages have equal rights within the EU without any discrimination. But at the same time, we wanted to make sure that visitors of the Commission websites can understand and access the content in a language they understand. This language may not always be their native language. What does it mean? That in the process of this rationalization, we ran a very extensive user research with over 100,000 replies from our online survey. And in this survey, we specifically asked which one would be the second preferred language for our online content in case the first language would not be available on the site. And the data, the answers we received showed that with English as either the first, or so active, or the second, so passive language, we could reach around, for some types of content in particular, we could reach around 80% of our target users. So obviously, by combining more languages, adding French and German, the rate of our reach was even higher. So there are several elements that enter into play when the owner of a site and ourselves as owner of our sites decide the language coverage. On the one hand, as I said, the legal obligations, the willingness to reach the widest possible audience, but at the same time, we have to make sure that we use our human translation resources wisely. And I think this is something that DGT might have a lot to say about. No, we have to use human translators where we can be sure that they have the bigger impact. In this slide, you can see, just to have a very quick comparison, some data we can gather today on the language, the browser language of the visitors on our websites. On the left side, you can see data for the EC Commission side, on the right side on the Europa.eu European Union website. As you can see, with relatively few languages, we could reach the majority of our users. However, the decision is not only based on these figures, on this data. The European Union site, for example, is in any case always maintained in a fully multilingual way. All pages, all the content is always translated in all official languages. Why? Because it's very stable content. It is updated when needed, but this does not happen often. It provides general, high-level information about the EU. And it is an entry point to more specialized information at a deeper level of the websites or on other institution websites. And it targets as such a much wider audience, all age groups, all social groups. So let's say the impact and the importance of having all the content in all languages is more obvious, is more evident. It is also a smaller site. The Commission sites are several hundreds, and they are much, much larger. Also, the content is very different. It might have a much shorter lifespan. They might be targeted to very specific audience or narrow audience, or be about very specific technical content. So in this case, there are many elements to be considered when deciding on the languages to provide for our visitors. For these reasons, last year, our language policy was updated, and was updated by an internal body in the Commission composed by DG Communication, DGT, and DIGIT, the Department for Informatics, establishing some principles governing indeed the use of languages on our websites. Some of them were simply repeated. They were the same existing already, so complying with the legal obligations, what is required by law, aim for less and better content, the one language only should be the exception and not the rule. The concept of basing translation choices on a real data, on a real website visitors was introduced. So it was a specific, let's say, attention to this aspect. Try to select the languages that the highest proportion of users can understand, if not all languages are possible, and try to at least give users the possibility to understand if what they are seeing might interest them, even if it's not in their first or main language. There is a mention of non-EU languages, but the last point is probably the with this new policy. The use and the importance of machine translation as a complement to human translation for online content was acknowledged for Commission websites. Following the adoption of the agreement on this language policy, so the three institutions, DG.COM, DIGIT, and DGT, started working together at the beginning of this year, with the aim of enabling the use of eTranslation on Europa websites, on the Commission websites in particular. Both what we call the core corporate website, meaning where let's say the bulk of the information is and it's owned by DG.COM is presented, but also on sites managed and owned by other Commission departments. Just to explain, of these over 700 websites, they are not all owned by one single entity. DG.COM owns some of them, but all the others are owned by the respective responsible services and department, and each site owner decides on the language coverage. The purpose was to then enable eTranslation when certain on sites and or web pages not available in all languages, only in one or few of them, with a focus on informative content, non-binding for the Commission from a legal and contractual point of view. And we decided, from a technical point of view, to develop a web tools widget. This is the name of the widget we developed for our Commission websites, a small tool that webmasters can implement on selected sites or pages. This was an important choice in the sense that my unit, in cooperation with Digit, we developed a series of widgets of this kind for data visualization, for data protection, social media, and so on. And they all have some common features. They are technology agnostic, so they can be embedded by webmasters easily or relatively easily on their sites, irrespectively of the technology used for the site, to build the site, and especially they are compliant with all our security, accessibility, and data protection requirements, which, as you can imagine, are very strict for the online web presence of the Commission. Development on the widget started based on some high-level requirements. So first of all, machine translation on our pages should always be actively requested by the user. We should not present web pages by default in machine translation without the user requesting for it. Machine translation request would only be possible for official languages and only for the official languages not already available or on the site or on the page. This means that eTranslation will never override human translations already available. It should also always be clear for a visitor that the content they are reading, they are looking at, has been translated by a machine. And this is done by a warning presented at the beginning of the flow that I will show you in a second, and by a disclaimer always accessible to the user throughout the navigation. And finally, in the final version of the tool, it will also be used to gather statistics about the requests for machine translation sent by users. This is a very important aspect, because by seeing what pages or what type of content is constantly requested via the widget for machine translation, the site owner might take decisions related to their own language coverage policy. They might decide to add more languages, and they might decide that it's worth to have some content translated by human translator to ensure maximum quality and precision. So it's a very important information for the owners of the site. The project is currently in a pilot phase. So we launched the pilot of eTranslation on the Commission sites around mid-October, and the pilot will run until the end of November, so still a few weeks. The scope of the pilot is, in a sense, rather limited. A pilot is still a test, so there are risks, there might be shortcomings, so we selected a few websites or a few pages where we felt it would be safe to implement and make the widget available to the public. Some of these pages are pages owned by DGT or Digit. So let's say the partners of this project volunteered their own pages for the pilot. However, other services, other DGs in the Commission are also expressing interest in joining the pilot with us. But as I said, sites might have.
Still with us?
Hello?
Laura?
Yes?
Hello? You are back, yes.
Sorry.
We can see you now, yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's my daily drop in the network around this time.
It happens all the time. You were on the different project phases.
Okay, very good. So I was just defining, explaining the scope of the pilot. Some URLs on the Commission core websites, but for content owned by DGT or Digit, but other DGs as well, are currently testing the widget. As I said, there are many technical implications. Our systems need to communicate with DGT systems, and all this need to be embedded in a website. So there are some aspects that still need some tweaking, but hopefully this will be solved very soon, and we will be able to see how the widget behaves on our sites and technologies as well. What does all this look like? So I hope you can see it. Otherwise, actually, you are encouraged to go and see it yourself with your own eyes. This is a DGT page on the Commission website of something that might be very familiar to most of you, the European Masters in Translation. This page and others in this section are normally only available in 3 languages, English, French, and German. Let's suppose a user would navigate to this page and would try to select another language, for example, Spanish, by using the language selector on the top bar, on the top header of the site. By selecting Spanish, the page would reload, showing what you see here. So Spanish is not available. English, French, and German are available. And additionally, the user has the option, now that the widget is implemented, to perform an action, meaning to click on the translate or traducir button and request for the page to be translated. This is not, let's say, this translate button is not present on other pages. The user would only see that Spanish is not available and the options are English, French, and German, or others, depending on the case. By clicking on this translate button, the first thing the user would see is the disclaimer. This was one of the main elements, as I said, for us, make it very clear since the very beginning to the user that they are requesting a machine translated version of the page, that the content and that this translation is provided only to give a basic understanding of the page without, let's say, ambition of accuracy, with just a general understanding of the content. And before seeing the machine translated page, the user has to actively accept this message, select the language from the drop-down and actively accept this message. What happens next, in case it takes more than a couple of seconds? Normally it's very fast, but it depends. In case it takes slightly longer, a small progress wheel appears on the page showing that indeed the request was sent, translation is coming. When this is completed, the page is reloaded and shown to the user in its machine translated version. As you can see here, and this is what, made the development of the widget particularly complex on our side, we preserve the entire structure of the page as it is. So formatting is maintained, all links, all headings, everything is kept as in the original version, in the original language. It is simply, so to say, presented in the machine translated version. Now, it's very important for us and for DGT that users are always very much aware that what they see is machine translation. So the small box you see at the bottom always bears the indication machine translation. It allows to go back to the original version of the page with one simple link. And it also includes links to an additional, let's say, disclaimer page, or rather a page with an exclusion of liability, where we explain this is machine translation offered by the Commission. It is not.
Can I ask you maybe to start drawing some conclusions?
Yes,
as well?
This is done. So this is what you see. The next slide would just say, if everything goes well in the assessment, the plan is to roll out the widget more broadly next year. Thank you.
Okay, sorry about that.
No,
sorry about that, Laura. But we can take 2 very quick questions, and then we move on to Hannah and Akim. So, first question, the one that has received the most votes so far is, will non-EU languages be supported as well, thinking of migrants and refugees? Laura.
Well, let's say this is maybe more a question for DGT, in the sense that for the moment we are responsible for the development and implementation of the widget on our pages. We have done so based on the requirements we have agreed with DGT, and initially, indeed, the scope was limited to the official languages. Now, I personally do not know to what level eTranslation memories or engines can also cater for other non-EU languages, and combination maybe between EU and non-EU languages. I have no knowledge of that. However, I don't exclude this in principle. If agreed by all the parties involved, from a technical point of view, we could definitely investigate it.
Another question here, perhaps more for you, was whether eTranslation is post-edited on the Europa platform.
Post-edited?
Yes.
No, it's not. There is no human intervention in the entire flow.
Exactly.
Everything is done between IT systems.
Very good. So on the non-EU languages, yes, eTranslation does cater for a certain number of non-EU languages, Chinese, Turkish, Russian, for instance. So perhaps not necessarily the engines, the languages which were referred to in terms of refugees, etc. Now we move on. Thank you so much, Laura. We now move on to Hannah and Akim. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So my name is Hannah Riley, and I work as Head of Translation Strategy for the European Economic of the Regions, as it's a shared service. So I'm going to be co-presenting this little talk with my colleague Achim Ladwig, who I hope we will be able to pass the camera to him. And I am going to carry on. I just wanted to say it's good and bad in a way that we come last, because a lot of what I'm going to say is actually already been said. So by colleagues presenting similar projects with similar requirements. So I'm going to start with actually a very obvious statement, which is that really all of us these days expect things to happen quickly. We expect things to be fast, and we want them to be fast. And that tends to underpin pretty much all of our interactions online. We also need things to happen quickly. In the workplace today, we've got so used to getting things fast that we need it fast. So that's really what is the basic need behind everything that we've been talking about so far in this session. And especially when it comes to information, there really is no time like the present. And then the parenthesis being, of course, as long as that content is in English, right? Well, no, that's not right. That is not what we want. We do not want only English content to be available immediately to people, and everyone else has to wait. So all of our EU citizens deserve to get their content fast, and they deserve to have it in the language that they can understand. So that's really been the basis for all of the developments, I think, that have been presented so far today. And it's certainly the basis for the project that we undertook with the Committee of the Regions. We really wanted to address this need, and we're very committed to multilingualism. We want to be able to provide the content, and yet we have limited resources. We can't do miracles, and we can't provide, perfectly human translated content, necessarily as quickly as we would like. What we wanted was, as other colleagues have presented similar needs, we wanted to have up-to-date online information. We wanted that information to be available instantly, and of course we want it to be there in every European language. the obvious solution is to implement machine translation, but we know that there are risks in that strategy. Machine translation, we all know, is far from perfect. We need to consider those risks carefully, and we need to really think about how we could safely implement that machine translation. So we thought about it, and we decided that we would go ahead with a pilot project. This was last year, around a year ago, in fact, that our project began. We didn't feel that it was right to let people resort to Google Translate when we had an EU solution to offer. So we wanted to make use of eTranslation, and we wanted to make it available for people at the click of a button. In specific cases, similar to Laura's presentation, this is for cases where a human translation is not available or not yet available. And it's only really suitable for certain types of content as well. And we knew that whatever we implemented had to be very carefully tested, and the quality of the translation had to be evaluated. And another thing that made this, I think, a successful project was the fact that it was a true collaboration between our communications team on the one hand and our translation team on the other side. We had the comms team really working on the development, the implementation, and integrating the feedback that was coming from the translators who were testing. And then we had the translation colleagues who were analyzing the machine translation quality, who were testing the functionality, and who were feeding back, as I said, on the fitness for purpose, on the usability. Now, our methodology, I don't know if you can follow this little diagram here, but essentially we established a test methodology. We picked a number of languages that we were going to test. We had a willing team of testers, and what they had to do was to navigate to the web page, to request the machine translation and compare the original English, which was always the source, with the machine translation. They would then quite simply count the errors that they found. They would give an accuracy and a fluency score. So all of this totally subjective personal opinion. They would give their overall impression of how good they felt the translated text was. And then we had a little quality score that was calculated. And then the testers could add additional comments, and then they could compare findings. So they all evaluated up to 15 articles, I think, in total. And how did we measure the quality? Well, there is no perfect way to measure machine translation quality. I don't think anyone's come up with the best way. We devised this simple method, which we're sure is totally subjective, but it is as good as any other. We devised an error rate, which is essentially the number of errors that the testers encountered divided by the number of words in the text. The fluency and accuracy score, as I said, was assigned quite subjectively by the evaluator as a score out of 10. And then we asked them to give an overall impression. Was the translated text fit for formal publication, only fit for informal use? Was it just fit for gisting, so just to get an understanding, or was it completely unusable? So we took those from the evaluators, and then we calculated automatically the quality score, and that was just adding up the fluency and accuracy scores, multiplying those by 10, and then subtracting the error rate. And that gave us a quality score out of 100. Now, I'm sure you're curious to see a bit more how it looked. So I am now going to hand over to Achim, and he's going to show you how the interface looks and talk you through some of the results that we found. So over to Achim.
Microphone, please. Achim. We cannot hear you, Achim.
Can you hear me now?
We can. So
okay,
you're head of unit of
so
social and digital media in the Committee of the Regions. So I forgot to say that.
Thank you so much. Very close cooperation between the translation department and the communication department, because also in the quality check we had a very close working together. We don't just want to translate stuff for the sake of translating it, because we want to use it to communicate with people, and that's quite important to have different viewpoints on the quality aspects. Now I will run you through that quickly, how it works. So I hope you can see that here. So this is a snapshot of one of our web pages, and you see that you have the French version of it, but unfortunately this news item, for instance, was not translated. Could be several reasons, no resources, timing, etc. Now, any interested visitor who goes on purpose on the French variation of our website might be disappointed, but here finds a button which is called Traduction Automatique here. So if you click on that, then on the right hand, you see a small disclaimer, which makes it clear this is a machine translation, don't expect to have the perfect thing, etc. Now, once you click on it, it will display the news item in the language of the variation you're on it. Now, the point here is, from a technology point of view, the site is preserved in terms of the HTML code, etc. And you have here a little button which says Afficher le texte original. This is quite important because people might want to toggle between the different versions. So to just see how the original was, how the translated version was. And this button, this translation button, is applied to every page where there is no translation available on the news items, event site, etc. Now, going to the next part, this is a bit technical, but I just wanted to highlight three things. Our website communicates directly with the EC machine translation computer system. I simplify it a little bit. Now, it could very well take a couple of seconds until the machine translation computer responds to our website, because it takes some time to communicate, it takes some time to translate. If there is a high demand, then it might take longer. Now, in order to mitigate that risk, what we did is we basically every time somebody requests such a translation for the first time, this translation is cached on our website. So the next time somebody goes there, he or she does not have to wait for anything between a second and a few seconds. It will be instantly delivered because the translation is already there. And that's, I think, quite innovative in that respect. It saves a lot of time and it improves the user experience. Now, what we found basically is it works. So that's why it has been in production for a year now, and we haven't received any complaints. On the contrary, we got quite a lot of positive feedback. And of course, most translations are deemed fit for gisting or informal use. It won't be necessarily the perfect translation, sure. We have a relatively low error rate, as you can see, and I can say that the results are fairly good. The bottom line here is that people, from feedback which we received, is basically that people are very appreciative of having this option, very appreciative that they don't have to go to the Google Translate and other things, but they can have a direct inbuilt solution. And I would add to that it's, I think, also a good sign that we use a European solution here, a solution provided by our own institutions for this thing. It's a strong take-up by users, as I said. Very good cooperation with our colleagues from the translation department. There are still some skepticism among colleagues at the EU. We have been presenting that at various interinstitutional fora. I can understand that to a certain degree because it's not an all dancing, all singing solution. For instance, I would certainly not apply this to very complicated legal text, for instance. On the other hand, others are following our examples. Some EU institutions have asked us even for the source code and with some technical help to implement that. What's next? We are thinking to possibly fine-tune a little bit the disclaimer. It's a complicated story because we don't want to have such a big disclaimer here because people are not interested necessarily. On the other hand, we need to be careful. We know that DGT has rolled out a new language engine, a general language engine, and we are now testing this. Might be even provide better results. And we really love to work from a communication department with our colleagues from DGT, so we have a few more innovative projects in our mind. I won't reveal any secret. Maybe next year we can present together something else. And with that, I can also invite you, if you have any questions or you want to have our evaluation report, please write to us. Email address is there. And if you want to try it, please go to our website and try it for yourself. And we would really honestly ask you for your feedback. If you have any criticism, any suggestions how to improve it, we are very much interested in that. With that, thank you very much. Thanks to Hannah. Open to your questions.
Thank you so much. We had a specific question for Hannah, and let me just try to find it back. Hannah, have you also considered the error severity to calculate the error rate, or typos are just considered as severe as accuracy errors? As you are head of strategy for translation, I'm sure that you will be able to reply.
We did consider this. We considered lots of things when we decided to come up with this this evaluation methodology. And we decided to keep it very simple, possibly too simple. We decided, for example, to not go down the route of error typology, because once you even start discussing it, you could take a year just discussing that. We've seen it when we look at other kinds of quality estimation that we've used elsewhere in our translation workflows. And so we decided to be very, very basic, actually. And in the end, we felt that it gave a decent indication. What we wanted was to have a means to compare. We didn't want a perfect MT evaluation mechanism. That can be developed elsewhere, DGT, or whoever wants to develop that. Really what we wanted was a means to compare, to get an idea of quality. Is it good enough for this website? And to be able to compare quality across target languages and between target languages. So we went for something that was as simple as we could think of, to also not put the evaluators off. So we went, we thought about it and we decided to be simple.
Very good. I didn't see any specific question for Akim. We have the most voted for question here. Do you train the MT engine by having human translators check and approve already active text? But I'm not entirely sure, Akim, if you want to come in on that, or if you would like me to take that. Akim. Hello? Hello? Am I still, can anybody hear me?
I can hear you. Maybe Akim is not hearing us.
No, I can hear you now. I was kicked out. Now, what was the question? Sorry.
Do you train is this the first question which has the most votes? Do you train the MT engine by having human translators check and approve already active texts? The corrected text can be used for future improvement of machine translation. I was just wondering whether you felt any appetite to reply to that question, or if you'd like me to give it a shot.
No, I can try. I mean, we would be very interested to do that. It's just that we have a very limited number of staff members dealing with all these things. So, I mean, appetite is a lot, but we can't do everything.
Very good. Very good. So I think we are drawing here to a close. I would like to thank cordially all of the speakers. It has been very interesting. I will not try to make any major conclusions, but it's clear that all of the presentations have been very operational, given us a lot of tips and tricks, gone into the details very transparently on what you have been doing, saying things like the importance of the disclaimer, clarifying that machine translation should be on demand rather than anything else. Clarifying for everybody here present that machine translation and human translation are not at the same level in any way, that the machine translation is good on some things, whereas human translation has its role and will have its role. Now, I just wanted to, before I let Aminda come in for a conclusion of the whole day, just to say maybe this, that multilingualism and communication, multilingual communication is really, truly essential for us, for the European platforms, for the Commission in general and the other institutions. And machine translation is, in fact, today, I would say, the only way that we can do this with the volume of content that we have. The volume of content that we have across these 700 different platforms, which are sub-platforms or systems which are on Europa, for instance. That's a huge volume of content. And it's very difficult, even impossible, I would say, to have human translation for all of this, unless it's static content, of course. So I would say there is a very clear complementarity here when we think about the different European platforms. I'd like to conclude with those words for our session here today. Again, thanking the speakers and thanking all our attendees. We're 160 still. So, Aminda, would you like to come in, please? Thank you.
Hello. I hope, thank you for that handover. It's good to see, as you say, 160 people logged in here, but there's more. I'll tell you in a moment. And I hope you found the session interesting. The idea of translation helping democracy is very pertinent. And on that subject, it seems as though TEF 2020 has something in common with the American elections. While people in the US have flocked to the polls in record numbers not seen for 120 years, here at TEF 2020, we've had more than 1,000 people following the web streaming, plus, of course, those watching on this web platform and the app, and more than 100 people have downloaded the Android version of the app. So thank you for everyone for tuning in, and do spread the word. It would be good that even if more people could join tomorrow. As you can see from the program, there's an opportunity to join the virtual networking starting right after this session. There you can meet some of the speakers that we've heard today, along with the other translation professionals attending this event. You can swap experiences and stories, you can share ideas and valuable contacts, and of course you can discuss what you've heard this afternoon. Please don't be shy. Do reach out to people even if you don't know them. Be brave and take the plunge. You never know who you might meet and what you might discover. In addition to some of the speakers that you've heard today, these networking sessions are also the chance to share your experiences on platforms with Margit Perko, to find out more about translating Europe with Elisabetta de Giampietro, and for newcomers to pick up some tips and tricks for a successful TEF from Inka-Liisa Vihoinen. The networking is open till 7 o'clock tonight, and as you can see from the programme, there are opportunities to repeat the exercise in the next couple of days. Tomorrow morning, we start the day at 9:30 CET with our second keynote speaker, Rick Vera, who will be inviting you to try to crack the magic formula for the day after tomorrow. Curious? Well, tune in at 9:30 tomorrow morning to find out more. And I'd like to give one last thank to today's speakers. Thank you to our interpreters who've helped us communicate so well throughout the day. And of course, thanks to you, the audience, for following us. Do share your thoughts on Twitter, #2020TEF. We hope to see you in the virtual networking rooms in a moment, starting just now. And so I'd now like to officially close this final session on the first day of 2020 TEF.